But for the most part, yeah, Tokyo Xanadu, made by Falcom, also the developer that brings you the likes of games like Trails of Cold Steel, all the Trails in the Sky games, all the Trails series in general, and also Ys, which are two very popular JRPG franchises at this point. We've only ever played Trails of Cold Steel once, so when I was coming into Tokyo Xanadu, I was expecting something similar. I was actually kind of surprised how much similarities there were between Tokyo Xanadu and Trails, but given the fact that I enjoyed Trails of Cold Steel 1, it was a nice surprise. So let's give you your thoughts, or I'll give you guys my thoughts on Tokyo Xanadu. I'll give you guys my good feelings, my bad feelings, and on the whole, we'll just wrap it up in a nice, neat little bundle. We don't have to talk for too long about this one, because everything I've got to say is nice and short. For the most part, Tokyo Xanadu was fairly similar to Trails of Cold Steel in the sense that it was a kind of nice, colourful, cosy, warm game to play. It's the type of game that I like to kind of put my feet up and relax with. You don't take it too seriously. You're not expecting anything groundbreaking in terms of like a kind of Hollywood, psychotic, crazy, twisty-turny story. Tokyo Xanadu is not as complex as Trails, right? And if you haven't played the Trails games, I'll try not to compare it too much, but the games are so similar in almost every sense, except I feel like Tokyo Xanadu is just a Vita game in the sense that it's obviously been designed back in the day for a handheld console that just wasn't as powerful as the big computers at the time, the big gaming consoles, and therefore it's a little bit shorter. I feel like it's a little bit less tactical in the sense that obviously you've got your hack and slash mechanic in this game, where your dungeons aren't turn-based, you are doing the kind of action-orientated combat. We played on hard difficulty, and I feel like for the most part that was fine. It gave us the kind of the floor to experience the game and try and improve, customize our characters with their weapons and their armor and all of their spells, their cores, and basically try and get through the dungeons while also overcoming the challenges and the obstacles of the game. I will say that in terms of the difficulty, it was harder than I thought it was going to be. I know it shouldn't come as a shock that hard mode was, hard, but for the most part, I also would like to point out that I felt like the difficulty curve of this game on hard mode was very, very up and down at times. The first two bosses I fought against were really, really a pain in the dick, and then by the time you unlock all your other characters, you unlock a bunch of your R2 abilities, your EX skills or whatever they are, you get your X drive, and then obviously you get your limit breaks, which expand as you go through the game. Suddenly the bosses don't become as much of a problem later on. You also get access to more healing items, but I feel like for the most part the boss fights are the most exciting parts of this game in terms of the combat, although the dungeons were pretty pleasant to play through. The boss fights became a kind of rinse-repeat circle of just spamming your power moves, which was fine. It's honestly not that bad. I will say that for the most part, all the art style and the characters in this game are, as I said before, they're charming. Again, we'll try and keep this as kind of structured as possible. I'll try and talk about the good stuff before I talk about some of the negatives and things. But your main character of Kou, I actually enjoyed playing as Kou a little bit more than I did playing as Rin in Trails, because I feel like Rin always kind of lets people walk all over him, whereas Kou here doesn't really give a fuck when it comes to the characters, and he seems to always just do whatever he wants, and he's not quite, ashamed to hide his tiredness sometimes and how exhausted he is with everything. So that was kind of fun. You'll notice again behind me, there's a lot of like similarities to the Trails games in the sense of like all of your recipes, all of your menus, even some of the core swapping out of when it comes to customizing your characters and their cores or their battle abilities or their weapons and things. All of that is taken almost exclusively from Trails, and although some of it is different, a lot of it feels very similar. The maps, all of the navigating the school and talking to your friends, your free time, and all of that stuff is all taken directly from Trails, even some characters like Toa. So that was kind of cool to see, because most of it, again, as I said earlier, Trails does these things pretty well, so that was nice. I will say that I feel like, again, and I feel it's because it was a Vita title, but I feel like this game did not hold my interest as much as the Trails games did. Again, that might just be because the project of Tokyo Xanadu was a lot smaller than Trails. Maybe the budget for the game was less. I don't know how much money they pumped into making this game, as opposed to making some of the mainline games in the franchise. It just comes across as a little bit less polished sometimes and extremely repetitive. So if you play the first couple of dungeons and you realize very quickly on that you're not bothered, the entirety of the game is exactly as, you know, you kind of understand the formula very early. It's, as I said earlier, you meet a new character, they have a problem inside of them. It ties into the plot vaguely, but again, the main overarching plot of the game is kind of bare bones. The game is shorter, so it feels like a bit more of an arcadey Trails games, and as a side title, you can kind of play it on its own. If you're looking for a break from all the other kind of Falcom games that you might or might not be playing, but I feel like if anybody is to pick this game up and expect an absolute roller coaster of a time in, you know, the modern era, I don't know if this game is going to do that for you. If you're trying to go through all of the JRPGs that are available to you because you've played Trails and you've played Persona and you've done all these games that are very similar to games like this, then you might want to pick it up and add it to your collection and try it out. But would I recommend this to anyone who wasn't a Falcom fan or who wasn't like a massive kind of JRPG nerd? I'm not sure. This game is also quite expensive at the minute on Steam, which is where we played it on. Luckily, we very kindly got gifted this game by a friend of the community, which was amazing. However, if you were to buy this game on Steam at the moment, it is extremely expensive. I think it was like £35, which when translated into dollars could be anywhere in the ballpark above like $40-50. You can play this game free on PlayStation Now, but again, given on how that changes in the future, I don't know if that will still remain on there. If you can get this game on a sale, or if you can play this for free on PlayStation Now, I would recommend that's the best way to take it, because that way if you pick it up and you decide that it's really not that exciting to you and it's a little bit boring, then that way you won't feel bad about it. So try and look for other avenues to get the game. If you already own it and you're thinking about playing it because it's sitting in your Steam archive, or you have it on your, I don't know, your PlayStation or whatever, then by all means go for it. I do think that the game does suffer a little bit from the classic JRPG cheese, the long-winded character discussions, which some people love, but for me personally, there is a lot of talking in this game. I would say that we spent at least 50 to 60% of our time, rather than actually playing the dungeons, you just spend talking to characters, listening to characters. Sometimes it's plot related, sometimes the discussions between the characters, the social interactions, sometimes they're relevant, you know, there's a bit of character building here and there. A character will make a mistake, or they'll improve, or they'll reveal something about themselves, and that's great. But then a lot of the other times it's absolute waffle, you know, sometimes even with filler characters that aren't even relevant to the main story. So again, it always comes down to the same discussion with these kind of moments, right? And it comes down to, are you invested in the world that they've built for this kind of game? Are you invested in the characters? Do you enjoy it? If you do, it's going to be great for you. You've got a lot of time to spend here. You can listen to every character as much as you want. You can talk to all the NPCs. You can get totally immersed in the cozy world that they've built for you. But if you're someone that doesn't have a lot of time, or you're not really that bothered, I don't think this game's going to sweep you off your feet. It's very similar to a lot of other kind of RPGs. And although it looks nice and it plays very smooth, it can be a bit kind of slow sometimes. I mean, I'm clicking through this VOD trying to find gameplay for you guys, and you can already see how much time we spend not in the dungeons. But yeah, I do feel like the cast of characters, although they were kind of okay, I said earlier that I kind of liked them. Most of them were alright, but some of them were quite unlikable at times, especially Asuka, in my opinion, the lead kind of heroine, if you like. She's introduced very early, and for the longest time, she is quite frustrating to deal with. It's not a problem, it's just if you're listening to the story, you might find Asuka you might feel a bit put off her at first, but again, obviously that's player dependent. Some people have different views on her. Yuki's quite annoying, and then some of the other smaller characters that have the squeaky voices that are always screaming Kou's name and loving him at all points, it gets a bit kind of... that can get a bit kind of over the top sometimes, but again, I feel like that's just the genre in general, and if you're buying a game like this, there's a strong possibility that you know what you're getting in for, and if not, then it's probably why you're here watching a video like this, where someone can explain it to you. But Tokyo Xanadu, to kind of briefly sum up, I will say as well, just quickly, on PC, this game always told me that it was running at 60 FPS. My frame counter told me that it was running at 60 FPS. However, I don't think this game was running at 60 FPS, which is a really bizarre thing to say, because normally your counter will actually identify exactly how the game is performing. There were times where this game felt like it was sub 30, and yet you know, my frame rate was telling me it was running crystal clear. Or really smoothly. I don't really get what that was or what was causing that kind of sensation, but a point to note for PC players, if you guys do pick this up on a really high-end PC, sometimes it does feel a bit like ass, so just a word of warning on that front. For the most part, it's a very old game, and it should run smooth as fuck, but it felt a bit clunky at times. We also had some bugs that I will quickly mention. Although the game never crashed on me, there was 3 times over the course of 9 days where the audio just cut out and it doesn't come back, so you have to actually just save the game and reboot. Now, if you have just recently saved or are coming out of a cutscene, that's fine, you can just reboot instantly. But if you're in a dungeon, you might be a little screwed for a while playing without audio, which is a bit bizarre. I'll also point out that there is a really, really interesting bug that, again, will only really bother you if you're playing on the harder difficulties when the boss fights are quite relentless and, I'm trying to think of the word, they're quite unforgiving at times. Some bosses can 3-hit you in this game if your characters aren't built properly or they are the squishier range characters. There was a bug we encountered where when using a healing item in the healing menu, my character would start my character would not move in a specific direction upon leaving the item menu. So if I was running forward and then I opened my menu to heal, which you're going to be doing a lot of in a game like this, again, especially if you're on hard mode, I found this bug where like the characters would get stuck and they could only run forwards and backwards or side to side. And in the early boss fights, when you don't have all of your powers, and you don't have a lot of money, and you don't have a lot of healing items, that bug is really quite treacherous. For the most part, yeah, Tokyo Xanadu, if you love Falcom and you love RPGs and you're desperate to try something new, you could maybe give this game a spin. I found that it was very long, very repetitive. If the game had had 2 chapters less, I normally really like value for money when it comes to these kind of games. But, and maybe that's why it's priced so expensively on Steam. Maybe they think that they have put a lot of work into this game, which is fine, but it's very repetitive, and I don't know if someone who doesn't enjoy the first couple of chapters is going to enjoy the next 5 chapters, because all of the side stories are just dungeon crawling, and every single chapter is the exact same recipe, almost in the exact same order. You can do some side quests here and there, but they're almost non-existent, and they reward you with very little, and it's up to you whether you're going to invest all of your time doing this kind of stuff. But Tokyo Xanadu, very charming. Didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Trails of Cold Steel. I'm glad that it's finished, and I don't think I'm going to be returning to this one for quite some time, but I am glad we tried it. It is a smooth, kind of chill dungeon crawler, and if you're looking for something relaxing to play in the background while also doing some other stuff, this could be the game for you. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts, and if you agreed with any of the stuff I talked about. If you have played Tokyo Xanadu, let me know what you thought about yourself, how much you enjoyed it, and if you haven't played it, then good luck.